I want to welcome everybody to another Better the Pond Pondcast. This is Warren Berry from Instinctive Solutions. And today our guest is Mr. John Wellington. Now, Mr. John Wellington, he hails from Boston, the land of the Bruins and marathons. I mean, it's famous, right? I mean, the Bruins, it's the Bruins, enough said.
Absolutely.
And John has served in the U.S. military, and I want to hear all about those stories. In fact, he just before this conversation, he mentioned to me that he actually lived in a tank. Now, I'm not sure how many people can say that, so I want to hear all about that. He's run several businesses. He's done coaching. He has higher ground motivation, and right now he is a stay-at-home dad, which is actually really remarkable. And one of the things that really inspired me about John is he wants to give back to veterans, and so he is bettering the pond, and that is part of his story that I want to hear as well. What is he doing to make the world a better place? So, John, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Warren. This is my first podcast and a pondcast. So I'm getting two birds with one stone.
Oh, well played, my friend. I will put you under my wing.
Okay.
So you were once, John, you were once a gosling, and now here you are as a full-grown goose. And John, I want to hear your backstory. Like, you were a gosling way back in Baltimore. Here you are in Boston. You've had all these travels. You left the nest, right? What got you to where you are today? Tell me, John. Tell me about yourself.
I have a very interesting story. I don't know how unique it is, but it is an interesting story. I grew up in the Baltimore, Washington area. My mom was in the military, and so I had that early influence of military. I had a grandfather who served 20 years in the Navy. Some other members of my family were in the military, and so I had that military influence early. But I remember growing up in the Washington, D.C. area. My mom worked at Walter Reed Medical Hospital, and we struggled a little bit in that time. We have these families, and we don't have training manuals on how to raise a family. So I remember a lot of struggles as a kid, and coming up in that area, we moved from Washington up closer and closer to Baltimore. And eventually I found myself in Baltimore. I was living in a...
I'm gonna cut you off here for a second. I want to hear about the struggles.
The struggles.
I want to hear about the struggles. What has got you here today? That it's the struggles that make us grow. So yeah. Let's dig a little bit into that.
Okay. The struggles that we've had, that I've had specifically, are growing up in Baltimore with a family that was struggling in poverty, what we knew of poverty at the time, and wanting to make a better place for myself, a better niche. I found myself working in Baltimore on cell phone towers. I was climbing cell phone towers, and it was a very dangerous job. And the guy on the ground was making more money than I was risking my life climbing the tower. So I wanted to join the military and get college money and get that college education to get out of that situation. And so I joined the military and found myself in the military thriving because I was 21 when I joined, and I was more of a peer leader. All these situations, they lead up to my story in Iraq. I guess that's what we're getting to. The meat and potatoes there. That's a really powerful experience when I went to Iraq. But before I went to Iraq, I was in the Army for the college money. That I was only in there to get the college money, get out and go better myself and get out of the situations I was in. And 9/11 happened. I was in Korea at the time, on the demilitarized zone of North and South Korea, and the mission in Korea was be ready to fight tonight. And so prior to that, my mindset, I was really trying to frame the mindset there as, it's not really a big threat. You're going to go to Korea, you're going to have fun, and then, everything will be fine. You can get out and go do your college stuff. And so I got to Korea September 10th, 2001. And that night I got my mission. It was a mission that if North Korea were to invade or something were to happen, and I got all the plans. I was on a tank with live ammunition. So we're in this mindset that it's peacetime, but we're in the most forward deployed area of the world with these tanks. And the mindset was something could happen with North Korea. And, you know, we kind of took it lightly. But that night, before I even had my name tags on my uniform, I was leading this tank section. And I signed for my tank, and the alarm went off for 9/11. And so September
so tell
11th
me,
happened. Yeah.
Tell me about this, John. You got to be ready to fight tonight.
Yeah.
What's that like? It's really interesting. I mean, you look at even, now this whole COVID thing has been going on, and everything changes on a dime, right? And,
Yeah.
there's a great friend of mine, Garrett Maxwell, we'll give him a bit of a shout. And he's talking about, war, leading in being wartime leadership. And so people you have to jump in, you got to be ready to fight tonight. What's that like to be able to be in that situation that things could change just like that?
It's very interesting. Prior to the towers falling, it was kind of lighthearted. Some stuff had happened. There were some skirmishes in the North Korean border. Nobody really took it serious that North Korea was going to invade, and you would have to be a speed bump to hold them back for the rest of the army to gather forces and then come try to rescue you. But that mission became very real, because at the time we didn't know who the axis of evil were. Well, there were three: the axis Iraq, Iran, and North Korea were the axis of evil. And so we didn't know what happened or what was going on. I remember jumping in my tank that night and having a mindset shift to where all of a sudden things just got really real. And I found myself in this calming place where I was the one who was in charge of the soldiers that I was with. And I just found clarity in that moment of, I need to take care of these guys. We weren't under immediate fire, but that threat was there. Eventually, I ended up in immediate fire in Iraq, and that mindset helped me out to lead soldiers there. But, to answer your question, it's finding that confidence and clarity in the storm that I really learned how to figure out the situation. So that's what that was like,
Now, if you went back to being a kid and having the struggles, and you were climbing cell phone towers, and do you think that those moments in your life back then with the struggles and the things you learned helped you in those moments when you were in a tank in Korea?
I think it gave me the confidence that I could approach something and have no fear. Well, I had fear. It's the courage, it's the courage when you stand up to the fear and say, I'm going to do this. So being 21, climbing an icy tower and the wind and everything else, you have to get up there to get the tower in place or get the antenna in place. And so that kind of mindset. And honestly, Warren, none of it was deliberate. Like I had a plan and mapped it out. I just had this personality that I was going to accomplish whatever I put my mind to. And those around me, I was there for them. I served the people that were around me. So.
And you still are.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's let's get to Iraq. And talking to you before, and just when I first met you, I just some of your story I think was remarkable. Tell me about that. Tell me about your in Iraq, and how being in the military and the things that you had to overcome in those situations.
So my whole plan prior to Iraq, I went to Iraq in 2003, was to get out, like I said, and go to college and be a smart guy, and make the money on the ground. But I came back from Korea with a sense of, I can't leave the military now. And I had that mindset that I need to be in the unit that would go first overseas. And I came back to a unit that I was in before I went to Korea. And we had a very technology-driven tank that was ahead of its time. And so they wanted to use that unit to go to Iraq as the lead operation. So I was very unique position. But then everything happened with Turkey not wanting our units there. And, the biggest joke for a while was who's got the biggest Navy in the world, the 4th Infantry Division. because all our stuff was on boats. And so we're sitting back in Texas watching this war kick off, and it was the initial push from the South. And I was just frustrated. And then all of a sudden we got the call that we're going over. And so all our stuff came off the boats on the tanks, and, you know, they cleared the southern path. We got to Baghdad, and then we dropped our tanks in Baghdad, and we pushed from Baghdad north. And so it was this unknown, and it was this eerie calm as we got through there, because a lot of forces had already been captured. You know, there wasn't a lot of big armored targets that the tank is normally after. There was a lot of the insurgents and things that we faced later on. And so it was this weird calmness at the very first month until logistics supply chains got there. And it was like, what are we doing? Is there really an enemy? What's going on? And then all of a sudden, Iraqis were being released that knew where the military ammunitions were. And so they were taking these rounds that they would find that we didn't capture, and they would bury them into the ground. So we had this other layer starting to evolve in 2003. So we had a mission where we trained up, and then I think I can't remember who it is, but every plan doesn't survive its first assault, right? So we had this mentality that we had to adapt and figure out how we were being attacked and how we can engage the village. It was a very unique situation that the plans, everything we put forward just fell apart. I was in a unique position where I was a tanker, and tankers are known not to dismount their tank. It's called death before dismount. I'm not going to dismount this tank. It could break. I'm not leaving this tank. And there's a couple of movies around that, but they were putting us tankers in helicopters, and we were going in these helicopters into villages and air assaulting in. So you have this mindset of death before dismount, and all of a sudden you find yourself with your guys in a helicopter doing an air assault mission that you've never trained for. It's just a unique situation that we were trying everything to gain that momentum and not to get hit so much, not to get blown up, and try to build the relationships. It was interesting that in my community, we did a lot of outreach to the locals. We would build the schools, and we would reach out to the leaders in the community. And so a lot of the mission was networking. Yes, we got hit with explosives. We would be in firefights, but our daily lives were setting up security, going out and being diplomatic in the community and building those relationships. And so when we would have a school get blown up that we were trying to rebuild, we would go out and talk to leaders and say, this doesn't make sense. You need to tell us who's doing this so that we can fix it. We're here to do good things. We're not here to tear you apart. We want to build you up. And one story that I remember a kid sharing, he came up to me, and he was an amazing kid. I've never shared this story, Warren, so, bear with me. But this
first Pondcast, and you get to share this story for the first time. This is brilliant.
This kid, he would look out for my tank when I was set up on perimeter. He lived in the village, and he would come up and tell me, hey, there's some bad guys that just came into the village, and they're looking at you guys. And he would tell us who it is. And this is a huge risk for this little kid. But we would have conversations with him, and he's like, why are you so nice? I don't understand. You have such power. You have these big tanks, and you guys are so nice. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, Saddam, his people came around, and they would beat us up, and they would show their power by beating us up. I don't understand how you guys don't come around and just beat us up and take the power. Like, what is this? In my mind, I was like, these guys have lived their whole lives where it's this hierarchy of physical violence, and they didn't understand that sometimes you catch more bees with honey, right? Or with flies with honey. So it was interesting to get in and learn the diplomacy of the situation and the culture, learn about the people, learn about what's going on. Very unique situation.
I find it fascinating, John. You go from death before deployment, is that, or
death before dismount?
Death before dismount. So you're in that situation, right? Next thing you know, you're in a helicopter, and you're having to jump out of a helicopter in, your parachute, and never been trained. You're never, and you don't know what you're getting into. You don't know who's who. And yet, it's, to me, there's such a dichotomy there of, you have, on one hand, you're there to fight because that's your job and you have to try to protect, and yet on the other hand, you're helping build schools. Uh, how, how do you in your mind, how do you manage both sides of those things? They're just, to me, they're so opposing. You're helping on one hand and you're trying to fight on the other, in a situation that you've never been trained to do.
It's that resilience and that adaptability that I've really tried to bring in every situation in my life. I've even had that philosophy I brought to my personal life when my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3, and we had all these medical issues. And you know, that mindset and dealing with that situation and having to adapt, I found the military very empowering. You're surrounded by a group of people, and it's not just me. Trust me, Warren, it's not just me. The military mindset is, you're surrounded by a group of people that the mission is more important than the individual, right? So you got these group of guys that are put together and they're focused on accomplishing the mission above personal safety, personal security, just selfless service. That's exactly what it is. It's that putting yourself outside the situation to serve others. And however that mission comes to you, whether it's diplomacy or taking care of your buddy next to you when the bullets are flying and everything else, that's kind of how we deal with it. Just putting yourself outside that individual situation.
Wow, that's remarkable. That is, I can't imagine. I've never been in that situation personally. I mean, that is selfless service. I mean, you have bullets whizzing over your head, and and you're still in that time, and you're still having to serve. You're still moving forward under an intense crisis. So this is going to lead us into our next question here. This is perfect. You led the segue. So I believe that we're all odd ducks. We're all misfits. I want you to tell me about a time when you were that odd duck, when you were different. What have you done differently to stand out?
I've always been different, Warren. I've always been
perfect. And I want to know your superpower. I want to know what makes you awesome. This is, don't be shy. This is not about bragging, right? This is like your inner goose coming out to play, right? What is it, John Wellington, that makes you different?
I always had this mindset when I was young. I was really influenced by Rocky Balboa. There's a movie with Sylvester Stallone here in the States that I grew up to, and it's that whole mantra of, it's not about how hard you get hit, it's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. And so this thing plays out in my mind ever since I was a kid in everything that I do. And that, I don't know if it's a gift or what it is, but it's this mindset of, it's not about getting hit. It's about how many times you get up and how many times you keep moving forward. And so I think that's kind of what, I don't find it unique situation. I think that's where I find myself when I'm in a group of people, what separates me. And the reason I don't find it unique, because the whole country of the United States was built on these guys that were rebels, that, went against conforming and went against, and they used their logic and they used their brains and said, this isn't right. We need to stand up, and we need to make change, and we need to figure this out. And so I've always had this mindset that I assess the situation and I try to find the solution for the greater good, what the balance in this situation. And my wife and I, we have this conversation. She's so passionate. She's emotion. And I love that. I mean, that passion. But I have a logical side. I'm very logical. So we are always like, the logic versus the passion, and we're trying to balance it and work it together. So I think it's always finding that balance that I really strive for. I have this gift that I'm authentic and genuine. I'm sincere, and I want to find that balance. Where's the logic? Where's the passion? Where's the middle ground? Every time you have a conflict, it's built around emotions. You can start entire wars based on an emotional argument, and it might not make sense. But you have to go in and build the relationships and find out where the middle ground is, where we can meet in the middle. So I really feel that's what I found myself being different in every situation.
But you bring up an interesting point of the whole using Rocky Balboa, and it's not how hard you get hit, it's how many times you get hit and keep moving forward.
Right.
So you were like that as a kid, and yet
Yeah.
you were here you are in Iraq, and you're doing the same thing. Now I want you to tell me. You say you don't think it's unique, but I want you to tell me: do you think everyone does that? Do you think everyone gets hit or has bullets whizzing over their head and keeps moving forward because it's the right thing to do?
No, yeah, no, that's a very valid question. And no, everybody doesn't. I've seen some of the toughest soldiers that train really well, and they're bulked up and they're jacked, and you would think they would be
Yeah.
amazing. And when the bullets fly, there's a mind shift, and there's this, and everybody's exposed at that point, and who you are in those moments, I think defines your real character. I've seen people face their fear and turn and run the other way. I'm gonna share with you one thing that really inspired me throughout this whole thing when I came out of the war that I put together. And all conflicts like a tunnel. It's like a hurricane, and there's all this whirlwind of emotions going on. And I didn't know this in the military, but I knew it afterwards. And I'm trying to share this with other veterans and people that are going through struggles, is that you choose to go through this conflict because on the other side lies a better version of yourself. And so as you approach this hurricane of everything going on around you and this disaster, you make this conscious mind shift of, I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to get out on the other side, and I'm going to be a better person for it, and I'm going to figure it out. And so it takes that different mindset to face the chaos, go through it, and know that you're going to be better. So that comes from experience and confidence, and not everybody has the experiences to go through it. So
that is what makes you unique.
Okay, I guess so. I guess
So
buddy.
what's your superpower, John? If you were to if you were to look at, you grew up in the United States, there's Marvel Comics, there's Spider-Man and Superman and all that going on, right? What's your superpower?
I've spent months really as I try to reinvent myself again as a stay-at-home father, going out and being a business leader. I ran an ice cream store for 2 years. It was successful. I turned the business around, and I reached out to the community and gave back to the community. And I've really tried to assess myself, Warren, on what my unique skill set is so that I can reinvent myself for this next generation in the business that I'm forming and the relationships that I'm forming and giving back to the veterans. And I find that I'm very authentic, I'm very genuine, and I'm compassionate. That compassion, identifying myself with somebody else, yeah, that really defines me, and that's really my gift.
Nice. When we talked earlier, one of the things that we talked about was, helping people see in the dark, and I'm sure this will come out of more of your story of
Yeah.
helping people with mental health issues and those kind of things. So, and I look at that of when you said it to me, I thought that was very powerful. I help people see in the dark, and you sort of painted a picture of the headlights of the truck, and and I, from the conversation I had with you, to me, I thought that was a pretty unique superpower that you had, is that, even you said that when you turn your lights off, you can actually see more. So, as and I think that from what I heard from you, that was a pretty unique superpower that you can help others, see in the dark. I think that's utterly amazing. So that's my perspective of your superpower. You come at it from a compassionate, empathetic, loving place. That's and that's just who you are as a human being.
I really, and you know what, Warren, you and I just met a month ago, maybe. And that was the first time I looked at it that way. I was a stockbroker in 2008 when the markets crashed. And I always use this analogy of, you want to plan your financial future, you get in a car, you plug in the GPS, you get to your destination. It's that goal setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you and I were talking about how do you travel at night? And, you know, I said, well, you can only see as far as the headlights will let you see. And then all of a sudden it clicked in me. I have this whole military experience that you don't drive with headlights, that you're in the conflict and you're on the ground facing these battles in the dark, and you can only see as far as the lights shine, but then your eyes get adjusted and it's very weird. So you fight without the lights and you use natural lights to see further. And the way that you see further on the battlefield is to find the high ground. And so you can overlook a position and you can get eyes on the high ground. And that's why I formed the higher ground motivation speaking, where I'm going to go out and speak about my message of, you know, growing up in Baltimore, my combat experience, finding myself in a unique situation in the financial crisis of 2008 as a licensed stockbroker, building this book of business and trying to build a family. And then all of a sudden the family being faced with a child who has medical issues. And, you know, I have all these messages that I'm putting together to go out and share and let people know that they can see in the dark. And the way you see in the dark is just see the high ground a little bit and get through it.
Nice. That is, to me, that's a superpower. That you know, that makes you the odd duck, because again, not everyone can do that, which is an incredible talent. So can you, John, I'm going to shift gears again. Can you tell me about a time in your life when someone did something for you that left a mark, that left an impact on your life?
It's, if I've accomplished anything great, Warren, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. That quote sticks with me in everything that I do. I'm very fortunate, very blessed that there have been so many people that have helped me along the way. One of them was a first sergeant when I was in the military, who was in a role that was higher than his position. So he was an E7, which is a platoon sergeant level, and then he was filling the role of a E8, a first sergeant. And this mindset of, you don't need the rank to do the job, really resonated with me. And he took me under his wing when I came to his unit, because I had these challenges from Baltimore, you know, the street mentality of fighting and struggling, and, you know, this really weird mindset that you get when you live a life of scarcity. And he guided me and he showed me how to put yourself above the mission and take care of those around you. And you don't always have to do it the nicest way, but you know, you have to go in and you have to really care about what you're doing. And the way you care, you don't need the title, you don't need the pay. And this is an E7 who's doing an E8's work, and he's not getting paid for it, but he loves it. And so that mindset shift, it really impacted me in everything that I do.
So interesting. He didn't do anything monetarily. He didn't do anything to give you anything, but he did. He shared a mindset that left a mark on your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. So what are you presently doing right now
Okay.
to better the pond? And more importantly, I want to know why you're doing it.
As I reinvent myself, I have 3 layers that I'm building: my business side, my personal side, the family side, and then this side that I'm doing to better the pond and why we came together. And one thing that I recently did was partner up with an organization in Philadelphia who has a close personal connection with me, because I served with the captain that died in Iraq, but Team Foster. I partnered up with them, to go on a Memorial Weekend march to raise funds for their organization. And the way they do that is they go out and push their physical limits beyond what they normally do. And so I went on this 25-mile march that was supposed to start out as like a 10-mile walk. And I had this 30-pound backpack on, and I just pushed myself to these limits. And this organization is just phenomenal. Team Foster gives back to veterans who have PTSD and they have unique needs, and they train service dogs to address these unique needs. There's a lot of organizations that are out there that like that. And what I'm doing with that is I'm going out and sharing my message with these organizations. And when I come out to speak, I'm not getting paid. I'm gonna, any money that's raised from me speaking to these organizations, 100% is going back to the community that I come into, and that I speak my mess into a message type message, you know, this resiliency, adaptability, momentum, and goal setting, how you get out of the struggles of, you know, not being able to see in the dark.
So why are you doing, I mean, I want details. I want to know from you, Mr. John Wellington, why do you do what you do? Why does it matter? What is that inner driving force that you know, that gets you up in the morning to take a 25-mile, you know, march with a 30-pound pack, and you know, to do that, to raise funds, to go out and speak, right? You put yourself out there to speak. 100% of the financial aspect of that goes back into helping others. John, why do you do what you do?
That's a tough question, Warren. I feel very blessed to be alive and be in a situation where I can serve others. So I like to take that gift and give back.
I want more. You know, let's just walk back here a little bit, John. Right? I mean, you're a kid, right? In Baltimore, there was scarcity, there was lack. I'm sure that you grew up with some violence. You know, you were climbing icy cell towers. You know, making less money than the guy on the ground. You're in a tank.
Yeah.
You're in Iraq. You know, you own an ice cream store, which is just like being in the army. I mean, it's so diverse, right? What is that driving force that sits in behind all this, John, that has got you to this place where you're giving back to others?
I think it's just being an example for my kids. I do feel blessed that I'm alive. I've had several incidences where I could have died, and it wasn't Iraq, it was the cell phone tower. It was all these situations before Iraq, and then in Iraq, and then actually coming back and being in Hurricane Katrina. There were situations where I could have died. I'm very blessed that I keep putting myself in all these situations, and I'm here for a reason. And I want to show my kids that you can serve the community and give back to others.
What do you personally get out of giving?
Oh. You know, for years I struggled, Warren, with understanding what was happening. You know, that whole weight of, why is this happening to me? Why do I keep finding myself on a tower, or getting shot at, or getting blown up, or, you know, in Hurricane Katrina? Why is all this happening to me? And then all of a sudden I realized this past couple of years, I've been blessed to learn from this guy, Tony Robbins, who talks about life doesn't happen to us. Life happens for us. And it's that whole mindset, right? So Warren, if we look at, you know, what I talked about with Rocky Balboa and that vocabulary that we use of how hard you get hit, and, you know, how much you can stack on yourself and find yourself in these situations where you're just the unique one dealing with everything, and you're going to come out with a solution. Or you can look at it and say, why isn't life like a box of chocolates? You just never know what you're going to get. So this past couple of years of taking the ice cream business and learning from all those things and approaching a situation and just seeing it in a different lens has really, really helped me with that suppression of that 15 years of taking the war experience and burying it. I buried it so much, Warren. I didn't want to deal with it. It was so emotional. It was like a big dam where you have all these emotions behind it, and you just let it build up, and then all of a sudden it breaks free and it kills the village, right? So it's just one of those things that I've been able to see past that, and I want to share that message.
So I think now we're getting into the nitty gritty, right? Of why it why it matters, right? I mean,
Right.
you think about it. What if you would have just kept that buried? What if and you had the courage and resilience, yet once again, stories being told over and over and over again, right? And because of those situations, it's got you to where you are, and now you get to give that all back to someone else,
Yes,
so that they
absolutely.
and I think that's remarkable. So I applaud you. I salute. I salute you.
At least you use the proper hand, Warren. Some people salute me with the left hand, and it's a little weird.
So I want you to tell me, John, tell me about what does the future look like? What's your golden pond? If you were the guru on the mountain, you're the wise goose in the pond, and you can see into the future. I want you to paint me a picture. What does your golden pond look like?
I hope to make it to that wise old age, Warren. I think life's a precious gift, and we have to live in the present. And so I've really tried to live in the present. I think if I can make it to that old age where I'm in that situation, I've written a book, I've gone out, I've given back through public speaking. I built a successful real estate business for my family, and my kids are successful, and my kids are giving back to the community. I think that's what's important.
Sounds like you got your ducks in a row. So tell me about the book. Right, this is part of your future. So
yeah,
what when I look at your golden pond, right? I mean, what does that look like for you? In giving back to the veterans, you want to do the speaking. Your kids are obviously following your leads, which is fantastic. Tell me, you got your higher ground speaking. You're on Facebook. So what does that look like?
What does the book look like, or what is the balancing of the three-legged stool look like? What?
It's tell me about your book. What's the message there? What do you intend on doing with it? And also, with your speaking and you're giving back to the community, I want you to paint me a picture. What does that look like moving forward in your world?
Warren, just with the conversation we've had, I haven't even dug deep on any of my experiences, and I've had so many experiences that I feel I'm compelled to write a book about these experiences that we've talked about: the financial crisis of 2008, the medical things with my son, and I was a security manager for a large casino. And there were some tragic incidents that happened on that property that, just all these experiences. I want to share these experiences and let people know that you can see in the dark, and you surround yourself with the right people, and you connect with the right people that are going to make a difference. And through that book, I want to share those experiences, and I want to give back to veterans. And then through the speaking, I want to serve organizations that help veterans. Warren, I am far from perfect, and I can't go out there and save every veteran. There's these great organizations that have these systems in place that help veterans, and I want to raise awareness for these organizations and bring my message to these organizations so that they can contribute and make a difference in the veterans' lives that need it.
You know, I love this story. Do you know the story of the starfish, of the boy on the beach, and all these starfish had washed up, right? And they're everywhere, right? And
Right.
he's
Right.
throwing them back one at a time back into the water. And this elderly gentleman comes up and says, I mean, that's going to take you forever. There's just way too many. You'll never make an impact. Like, you'll never make a difference. And he threw the one in the water and he said, I made a difference to that one.
Yeah. For that one. That's
And I
right.
think
That's a
that's
power.
and that
I love that. That imagery in that. I love that.
and I think that's what I'm hearing out of your story, right? You can't help them all, and no, and and that's right. We're all far from perfect. That's why we're all odd ducks. But if you have one veteran get your message, you made a difference to
Absolutely.
that one, and if you can help him see in the dark, then you were successful.
You're so right, Warren.
So again, I salute you. So I want to, John, I want to thank you for your time today and sharing your stories and putting yourself out there for your inaugural Pondcast. I really really appreciate your time. Where do we find you? Where do my listeners go to find Mr. John Wellington, so that that they can connect with you, and hopefully help get your story out there?
Absolutely. I have the professional page that I have on LinkedIn, which is just John Wellington. You can search Boston. I come up on LinkedIn. I have my Facebook connections for my personal friends, and I'm trying to build momentum right now and create a Facebook page where people can really find me. Unique struggle in technology and trying to teach an old town to do technology. I'll tell you how to do it. If you have a challenge or anybody out there has a challenge finding me, please reach out to Warren or myself and we'll try to connect you to that page. But it's at Higher Ground Motivation. And you type that into Facebook and hopefully it lands you on the proper page where climbing a mountain. I have a couple videos that I shared about motivation and post-traumatic stress disorder. I really want this page to be a community where I connect with people that are wanting to serve the veterans. And you can email me, I guess, highergroundspeaking@gmail.com.
Highergroundspeaking@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And Higher Ground Motivation on Facebook?
On Facebook, it's at Higher Ground Motivation. Yeah.
And at John Wellington in Boston on LinkedIn.
Yep, and Facebook. I'm sure I'm the only ugly guy in Boston that has this unique look. The odd duck in Boston.
That is very sheen. It's very nice. I'm very impressed.
There's a lot of light going on. Where's your makeup artist? I'm supposed to have
that is that is not the typical COVID look, right? Everybody's this whole, you got this big mop going on. You got the opposite.
That's the unique gift of this, is that I can do it myself.
Very, very nice. Yeah, if you want anything done right, you got to do it yourself.
Well, try not to do that, Warren. I have failed by burying myself too much in work that way. But yes, when it's done right, you got to do it yourself.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. We got to speak to John Wellington. It was great talking to you. I love the stories, and I'm sure you have more. We want to spread the word of the things that you're doing to better the pond. And honestly, I think it's remarkable. I think it's amazing that you get to help people, see in the dark. You're a real, authentic, genuine talent. John, you're making the world a better place. And I want to personally thank you for doing what you're doing, because you're the perfect example when I talk about people that better the pond. That you're making that happen. So this is Warren Berry, and if you want to reach out to me, it is warren@instinctivesolutions.ca. So WARREN, Warren at instinctivesolutions.ca. Reach out to me, and I can also connect you with John. And so here we are. We're going to take you beyond the pond to better the pond, because we're better together. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Warren.